welcome to the 5th Annual Guild of Music Supervisors State of Music in Media Conference.
Have you guys seen the John Wick movies? Plural, more than one, or only one, or mixed bag? All right, well, we're gonna go on a journey of the mind back to the making ofs, the music behind all of these, which were just like a lot of franchises in Hollywood. I've been lucky, where I've worked on a lot of John Houlihan, but I guess I want to say that. Been lucky to work on a lot of franchises, and what I found is every single movie is its own journey. You can have the same core crew in the same studio, and sometimes even the same record company, and factors like that that influence what's going on in the music, but each film has a completely different journey. So I think we will start with Tyler and I reminiscing about the very first John Wick, which was a film that did not even have distribution. It was really kind of a super indie situation, and I got called over to meet with these two first-time directors. So that's phrase unto itself is a little scary and unnerving. When you hear the word first-time director, it's going to be a lot of work, but usually it's fun, and I kind of had a good vibe on these guys. When I first came in, I could see how much they love music because I came to the editing room, which was a little indie editing room on Olympic Boulevard, and there was basically a closet that had been converted into a director's office, and there were two of them, and they were both on their laptops furiously cutting away temp music for on their Final Cut Pro, and like trying to beat each other on scenes, and they were just kind of cool and spirited. And so those two co-directors are Chad Stahelski and David Leitch, and they were long-time super successful LA stunt people, and David was largely Brad Pitt's body double in a lot of movies. So it's like David was Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, basically. And Chad was Keanu Reeves' stunt double going all the way back to The Matrix. So then these guys had worked their way up to becoming stunt choreographers, and then they worked their way up to becoming second unit directors, and then they got known within the film studio community of people who come in and save an action sequence. So they'd go to Australia for 20 days with the principal cast of a movie, and the director might go home for Thanksgiving, and they would just direct all the, with dialogue and action and everything. So they made a great name inside the industry. So unlike first-time directors who are 23, 24 years old or something like that, these guys were in their mid to late 30s and had a lot of Hollywood experience. So anyway, so we went into this, I went in there and met, and I watched the movie, and I remember thinking, like, can he kill all those people just because they killed his dog? And just flash forward to the first test screening where they were checking people's appetite for the violence, and it's obviously a dark, violent movie, and everyone's like, they killed this dog! Yes, he could kill all those people. I was like, oh, don't underestimate the dog lovers, So anyway, we started. So I early in the process, I said to Tyler, finally we've known each other for 20 years. We're looking for a project, and finally it kicked in, and we're neighbors also. So I jumped to my head walking up to spotting in sessions and composer sessions 8 houses away from me up at Tyler. So it was like a nice thought. So Tyler came and met the guys, and maybe tell about your first impression of them.
Well, remember, you called me up and said, we're looking for an original Marilyn Manson song, and I've been directed to you. And I'm like, really? Okay. So I was working with him at the time, but I was busy on the Guardians of the Galaxy movie, and you came over, listened to a few songs. And
the first Guardians, yeah.
Yeah, and you heard Killing Strangers, and you're like, dude, that's like the theme to this movie. And 4 days later, we had a meeting in my studio, with both directors, Chad and Dave, Keanu, Manson, you and me, and cranked the whole album like a concert. And sure enough, Killing Strangers became the thematic song for that film. And then they showed us a trailer that looked really cool, like a teaser, a sizzle reel or something. And Chad and Dave worked on several movies I worked on subsequent to their genius. And so then you guys were asking me if I was available to do the movie, which I was not totally available. And then we kept talking about it, and I'm like, if there's a way I could do this with my friend Joel, That would be amazing. And you're like, Joel. And so then sure enough, everyone met Joel and they're like, that would be great if you're, if this is all cool with everybody. And that's where we started.
Well, it's indicative of, it's particularly Chad Stahelski, but Chad and Dave are both like really go-getters, proactive, and when they get set their mind to something, it's going to happen. So you had 1 foot and 1 foot out just because you're totally under the gun on Guardians of the Galaxy, and you have all the Marvel, on your back and craziness with that. And you're like, oh, I'd like to squeeze it in. I don't know. And they're like, he's doing it. He's doing it. So they're just single-minded. They determined that they wanted you to score the movie. Yeah, that's their key. They just are kind of genetically predisposed to not take no from an answer and just push them. You'll hear that theme through our stories as we continue to talk about things.
Yeah, and the Joel was the first person and only person that came to mind because he and I have been friends also forever, and he's hugely talented, and I thought that our sensibilities would be perfectly complementary for the film, and after like one session between Joel and I, just kind of going over the movie, he got started, and weeks later I joined in the mix, and through the 3 movies, we've had very interesting collaborations, back and forth, file sharing, and just kind of, completing each other's, needs for instrumentation and programming and stuff. And it's been really cool because it's been an opportunity for us to work together. Because we're both super busy, so it's been really fun. Each movie's brought us to our knees and within an inch of our life, but we managed to get through each of them.
The first every movie happened, the budgets got bigger and bigger, thankfully. But on the first movie, you literally had no scoring budget. You didn't really have money. We didn't have money for hard costs for musicians or for studios or stuff like that. So luckily, particularly your studio is one of my favorite in the world, and you're a multi-instrumentalist. So when you layer some live playing on top of your samples, same with Joel, that really made the difference. But that was an amazing kind of cinematic score made for 2 nickels. So
yeah.
How did you do that?
Well, it's everything that you've done in your life. You use whatever you have in your toolbox to make it happen. So we just figured, here's what our resources are, which are very limited, and then we just got to work. And as composers, you have to learn to be able to make music on pretty much anything in the room. So that's really what we do. If we have to play for, instruments from other cultures, we'll find a way to play something that is complementary to our idea, or, because we can't just have sessions all day long. We don't even have time. Literally, you have a ton of instruments around you and you just pick whatever up as you go, because it has to happen and there's not enough time to get anything done. So, John Wick is like working 20-hour days.
Yeah, and we had, just to fill out the picture of the crew, there was an amazing film editor named Elizabeth Ronstadler. She's Icelandic, and she was the most non-Hollywood film editor you could have, which is why they loved her.
Yeah.
And that's why the film kind of walked to its own path. And she was great, and she was great with music, and she was just great for the spirit and the vibe of the room. And we had the late Brian Richards, who's one of the best music editors of all time, and he was in there, lending his talents and his taste and kind of making it happen. So it's definitely kind of an all hands on deck crazy thing to finish it. And it still had no distribution when we were finishing. It had foreign distribution through Lionsgate International, but we did a test audience, and I mentioned before that the audience really embraced it, and it was really, I guess, technically the start of the Renaissance, right?
Yeah, that's true. True. That's a nice term there.
Yes, and they really loved him, and he just is that character. And we'll talk a little bit more about him because he was a producer on it. He was in the editing room, and he was at that pivotal Marilyn Manson meeting to try to convince you guys to come on board. So he was definitely very involved through all 3 films. It was every time I'd go to the editing room, I'd see this beautiful vintage motorcycle where you looked at it, you could tell there's only about 11 left in the world, and I know, Keanu's here today, so he was really hands-on and collaborated with those guys, and he really did them a favor. He put all of his clout and everything on the line to let his stunt friends direct their first motion picture. So that was pretty cool of him in general.
Yeah, that's the spirit of John Wick, by the way. It is an indie mentality. It's a team mentality, and as intense a litmus test that it happens to be, it is also just kind of a DIY attitude. So Chad, the director, really takes a lot onto his shoulders, and he fights to make really interesting things happen, and likes to have a team, not just people who do a job. He really likes to have cultivate a nice culture of people working together. So that's one of the great things about John Wick, and it's different than most films in that regard.
Yeah, that speaks to that thing I said about different journeys each movie. So in that movie, you and I were the music department. So when the guys had a question, or there was like a policy issue or a strategy issue, they came to us, and we were like, yeah, let's go for it. The second movie, budget was significantly bigger, expectations were significantly bigger. Well, ish. I think the first one, I'm probably speaking out of school, but like what I've seen on the internet was like as low as, shockingly low. It's like a $16 million movie. Second one was tens of millions. I'm not sure.
We worked for like Jamba Juice cards is what we got. I didn't work for that, but anyway.
Yeah, I worked for a Maryland Manson juice called Absinthe. That's
yes.
I like.
Yes.
Yeah. So we used the Manson song. He was kind of hilarious to have around too, because he's such a good-spirited guy. And the directors, again, to that family team thing, they brought him Marilyn Manson to the first test screen. Remember that?
Yeah.
And he's like, I love that. They're like, shh. And then another scene would happen. He's like, oh, that's so. It's like, zip it. We're trying to like watch the audience, watch the movie, and we're trying to score points. But it was great to have him around. Great spirit.
Yeah. So anyway, the John Wick franchise has been totally bizarre and unlike other things. But I have to say that it's been amazing working with Joel. Joel is a massive part of the aesthetic of the music of John Wick. And by the way, both of us are anti-violence, believe it or not. So
yes,
the music is somewhat reflecting our response to the violence or shock.
Well, the thing about the violence that comforts me is something that David Leitch explained to me about his take, the director's take, because it's obviously like gratuitous, but he said that the reason why people like the character John Wick is because it's the law of the West. John Wick never shoots or harms anybody. He wouldn't harm a fly unless somebody else draws a gun on him. So that's the whole premise of the whole movie. There's always a price on his head, and all these assassins are coming after him. So it's the law of the Wild West. It's kill or be killed. And in fact, the plot of the second movie is they're bringing him back into this world of an assassin. He goes, I'm done. He spent the whole time he's trying to retire. So anyway, that's what gets me to sleep at night, thinking about the violent factor. Let's jump ahead just so we don't leave Mr. Kevin Edelman stranded too long. We'll get back to John Wick 2, because John Wick 1 and John Wick 2 have a lot of similarities. But John Wick 3, I had Parabellum, right?
Yep.
I had taken a job on staff at 20th Century Fox Films in the music department. So it's a Lionsgate film, so I was not able to work on it. And
So I got a call from John. So yeah, that's the way I became a part of this journey on this this film franchise. Tyler and I are also neighbors. We just happen to
5 houses
we
away.
actually happen to be neighbors and have always wanted to work together as well. And John and I have been friends for many years as well. And this seemed like a perfect opportunity for us to come together. They thought I would really vibe with Chad, the director, on John Wick 3. So I was in large part the beneficiary of John taking his executive job at a studio, and I was brought in to supervise the third franchise, the third installment of the franchise. So some pressure to not screw up what they had already started, but Chad would never let that happen because he's got a very strong vision, and they had already established such an incredible musical world for this series, which they continued thematically through all 3 films. And we did some interesting things with music and with songs in the third installment. But I was just coming in as getting the baton from John and trying to run the race, and I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, arguably, it's sad for me to say the third movie's probably the best. I'm like, oh, damn it, guys, I wanted to be good, but not that good. Anyway, it was certainly the best financially. I think in the first 3 days, it took in more around the world than the other two movies did in their entire box office. So it's just nice that the whole franchise just kind of expanded.
Yeah, I mean, John, Tyler, and Joel really have built such an incredible musical sound for this film, for this series. I mean, they really did do something that was unusual, and that's in great part because of Chad's taste and his desire to kind of push boundaries.
Also, I would say we got on the path for this sort of Tyler Batesy, Jolie, dark goth kind of cool rock and roll score. We got on that path out of economic necessity. If it was up to Chad, the first movie would have had AC/DC over this montage and Ronnie James Dio. How many, like, if I had a nickel for every time he said Ronnie James Dio, I would be retired right now in Hawaii. I mean, he just loves his, big classic rock songs and the hard guitar stuff. So, but we had like nothing. I want to say like $30,000 for the first movie to do all the songs or something like that. It was like insane. It was a lot of begging and pleading and getting Marilyn Manson and Tony Sciullo, his manager, and then to buy in on the movie, saying, "Hey, this is a good match. We don't want to see a good pop culture match not happen. Yes, we've got no money and all that stuff, but come on board. We got Tyler's going to make sure that the song sounds great the whole way. We feather in and feather out. We really try to make the score match all the songs. So what better than songs produced by one of our composers, Tyler Bates, all coming out of the same studio. So the John Wick 1 was birthed out of economic necessity, that the sound and having to create original songs. There was a Bjork song in one of the scenes, and we didn't ever even ran a quote, but because we knew we didn't even have $5,000 for it. So we just scrapped it and started from scratch, and Tyler and an artist he was working with named Cassandra came up with an amazing song that was better than Bjork had seen. I mean, still don't know to this day how you did that. You covered like half a day, you whipped a song up that covered a 3.5-minute montage of action beats and story, and then it went right into your score, and it was just kind of, the perfect John Wick seamless music marriage we want.
Yeah, when you have to do it, you have to do it. So, I mean, that's just the way it is, but that's the kind of pressure or stress composers are always working under. We have to really crank out a lot of music on a daily basis. So when you see it in the theater, if you're not in the composer's chair, you might think, oh, I could have done something a little better than that. But, that was done in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because at the end of the day, sometimes you have an emergency that needs to be answered to, and that's all you have. So luckily, Joel and I have been very close friends for a long time, and we share a lot of similar tastes in music, and think we were able to kind of Bluetooth our way through these movies. I would say I definitely worked a lot on the song side on the first film, and brought our friend in Dylan to do some
La Castlevania,
some
really well-respected electronic artist.
Yeah, so he did some of the club music, but on the first movie, Joel definitely did the heavy lifting with the score, and it's a testament to his talent, and it inspired me, and it inspired the songs that were written for the movie. So it's very cool.
Then we went to the second film. Something very interesting happened with the directors, which was Keanu's schedule was up in the air, and they weren't sure if they were going to be able to do John Wick 2 at a certain time period, and so they're partners, and they have a production company, so they started developing another movie called The Coldest City, which ended up becoming named Atomic Blonde. So they were developing 2 movies at once, taking all the meetings for everything, and in Hollywood, you never know, it's so hard to get that green light, and then to their surprise, both got green lit at the same time. So they said, oh shit, all right, well, Chad, you direct John Wick 2, and I'll go do Atomic Blonde. So the good news for that was a good Hollywood, fortune for Tyler and I, where these 2 directors all of a sudden branched out, and now Atomic Blonde was a great score that he created, and I was a music supervisor at Atomic Blonde. David Leitch then, his next movie was Deadpool 2, so that was great. I did Deadpool 2, Tyler did Deadpool 2. So it's really been like, and you just did Hobbs and Shaw with David. So I mean, talk about directors blowing up in a fortuitous way for us. You know, that was amazing. So then Chad on John Wick 2 was hilarious. Like I said, he dreams big. He doesn't take no for an answer from anybody. And so I'll be getting calls from the studio, and they've been the producers. We're so over budget. Don't go over budget. You can't have music over budget. Blah blah blah. So we come in and meet with Chad. He's got storyboards. He's like, we're going to Rome. We're going to shoot a rave concert in the middle of the biggest Roman ruins there are, you know, called the Pass of Caracalla. He's got this vision. You can't even like get a question in or like talk to him. He's just on fire telling you all about it. And probably 30 people at the film studio told me, don't worry about that. The music scene in Italy, it's going away. That's not going to happen, going away. And back to that team mentality of Chad, he said, Tyler, not only do I want you to write that song and produce it and record it, I want you to be on camera, you know? So, and I want Cassandra, the singer, on camera. And oh my God, let's get Dylan in there as the DJ with Castlevania. So he's getting them ready. They're like getting their passports ready. The studio's like, it's not happening. It's not happening. And I see Chad, he's like, 3D VR version of the Bass of Caracalla, and he's got a shot list going and tells me, get ready to go to Italy. I'm like, okay, Chad. Sure enough, we went to Italy like a week later.
They paid for you to go. I wasn't going. They tried to cast an extra, and Chad called me up a week before shooting and says, dude, he says, I can't find an extra in Italy here to like be you. So can you come out? And I'm like, I'm kind of like really busy right now. He's like, I'm paying, you're coming. I'm like, okay, so.
And was it Guardians 2 at that time? That was that, right? At the same thing as us? I was like, gosh, get a break.
So we went out there and shot overnights for a week. You know, this is just anecdotal, but just a testament to actors, right? Keanu Reeves is the coolest person that I've met that is a professional actor. And here's a testament to it. So one night, we were shooting overnights, and Dylan, you know, the DJ, his trailer was next to mine. We were outside. Keanu's sitting out there having a smoke, and Dylan's like, hey, Keanu, do you think we can have a photo before we're done? He says, yeah, man, sure. So that was a Friday, and then we didn't shoot Saturday and Sunday. And of course, we were out with John, which was dangerous. But then we shot all the major band stuff on Monday. We had shot for nights before where they were having stunts roll through the stage, but the last night was our coverage. So 3 days before, Dylan says, hey, can we have a photo? Anyway, Keanu's killing himself on the movie every night, going straight into a bathtub full of ice at 5, 6 in the morning after shooting. So we're shooting, we're not wrapped. It's 4 something in the morning, and I look over.
Freezing.
It's
We're
freezing
outdoors
cold.
in Rome in the winter.
And I see Keanu walk up, and he leans up against these rocks to the other side of the stage, and we shot for another 40 minutes. And as soon as we were done, he just walked up to Dylan. He says, hey, Dylan, let's take that photo.
Yeah, they were shooting his scenes with the first unit down in these catacombs underneath and we were still doing the close-ups of the band on the land level, the big stage,
yeah.
With the open sky and all that stuff. And Keanu, it was a really hard scene. He got the shit kicked out of him all day, because he insists on not, being the one that rolls and all that stuff. And one thing he gets a lot of credit for in this movie is there's a lot of practical stunts. He really puts himself and physically tests himself on a daily basis. And he was literally like bloody and bruised and should have been in his car zipping back to his hotel to recover because he had the next day coming up fast. And he waited. I think it was even raining that day.
Yeah,
it was the cold and the rain.
Crappy.
To honor his word to the band to come do a picture. It was
just
so
with
awesome.
Dylan. It was just super cool. People don't do that stuff. They look for, oh yeah, he had to go. Sorry, That's usually what you would hear. But anyway, enough about that guy. This guy is a genius, and I just want this whole panel not to go by without people understanding the significance of my friend Joel Richard and this whole John Wick franchise.
Two times there were scenes that I believe, I could be wrong, but I believe Joel spearheaded, which were the museum action scenes that were part original score, part interpolations of Beethoven, Vivaldi number 2, but there was a Beethoven.
In the church there was Beethoven, but that was just was supposed to be the organ player playing. So I did that, and then the organ player gets shot and then falls across his keyboard.
Yeah. Vivaldi, Beethoven, Joel J. Richard, they're all in my book. They're all three of them are. It makes sense in that collaboration. But how is that being beholden to their melodies, but having to make it sting the action of such a wild, chase scene through a museum?
I think it made it easier, to be honest, because it gives you a structure to work with and then just trying to find a way that isn't too offensive to the diehard Vivaldi fans, which have probably crossed that line.
Most of them have passed away, I think.
There are many Vivaldi fans that are John Wick fans, right?
It was good. On the second one with the museum, the goal, at least the way I saw it, was to take, because Chad had stated that his grandfather loved Vivaldi, so that was the impetus to try to get Vivaldi in these films. And I was just kind of combing through, I don't know, on my iTunes looking for any kind of upbeat Vivaldi piece because I didn't have a Rolodex in my mind at the time for it, and came across the Winter piece, and then thought that would work, and then tried to find a way to morph that into the John Wick sound. And I don't know, at least where my headspace was, the end goal was to try to do, what if the sound of John Wick and Kevin's phone mixed together to sound like if Radiohead and the Beatles and then rock like kind of all came together. And that was like, I was thinking like the Beatles in the day of my life, just the kind of cacophonous, like day in the life, a cacophonous build with the orchestra and all that fused together. And I think it made it an easier approach, I think, for sure. It gave it, as well as because the film has so much music and so many different action sequences, I thought it was really great to have the Vivaldi be a kind of almost like a reset for your ear, as far as, you're hearing so much score. So it managed to, I think, succeed in the way that a song does.
Joel works in a state of a fever dream, by the way. He works 40 hours in a row at a time. So one thing that happens when you're in that mind state is you get a little warped. And our friend Brian Richards, who was the music editor on the first John Wick and a dear friend to both of us, was the best person to talk a composer off the ledge that I've ever known. And he definitely helped us through that first movie, really helped it become what it was. And it's really...
You're fried out. There's no time left on the clock. You just kicked ass doing a 4-minute and 27-second action scene, and then visual effects change, and the picture changes, and none of your hits work, and you have to do unmusical, kind of changes and miracles somehow to make it all work.
And you think everything you did is garbage, which sometimes it is, but... Anyway, Brian was great with that, and again, I don't know that the even the third movie score for John Wick would be what it is had Brian not been with us on the first one. But anyway,
the first one was like a seed, and everything just grew from there in a good way. And actually, Kevin, I'll ask you. I mean, I don't want to get in a ditch here on the evils of temp scores and the necessary evil of a temp track to have in your movie before your real score is written. But I would imagine in 3, you guys were mostly pulling from John Wick 1 and 2 to make the temp score work.
That's correct.
2 cues?
That's 2 cues over and over.
They used 2 cues the whole time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there was a lot of material already, in circulation for the music editor and the picture editor to work with from the first 2 films. So it all had the right tone, it had the right themes, but then, obviously the third film has its own storyline and had its own arc that took us to Morocco and, the Middle East and the desert and all, other elements, other kind of, cultural elements that had to be worked in through the score and and kind of interpreted into the theme. And then there was also the classical stuff in the third one too, and that's one of the things I really loved about coming into this franchise and just getting familiar with it from the first 2 and jumping into the third one. The way that these guys built this sound that kind of walked between this beauty of classical music and and just some like crunchy guitars and you know, and the juxtaposition of the beauty and the violence and everything, it just worked so well together. So that was continued into the third one. Again, we had our own challenges, we had our own, you know, temp love issues that we had to deal with, but you know, a lot of the foundation was already there, and you know, and those elements and those techniques really worked through all of the films, I think.
Yeah, and for those, most of you probably know what temp love is, but temp love is the nickname for when a director or producer or anyone who's on a core decision maker on the core creative team, something gets put in the first week of the editor's assembly in the rough cut, and they sculpt the picture to match that temp song. So you've got John Wick 3 scene with the John Wick 1 cue, and the director kind of thinks he's done. He's like checked it off the list. He actually knew it tested well in multiple test audiences, and he's loath to change it. He's risk averse, you know, but you guys have whipped up something amazing and new that builds on that idea and helps the third film. So it's kind of talking him out of the temp love of what's been living in the music track.
Yeah, and that's a best case scenario temp love when it's from one of your own films. You know, the challenge, the bigger challenges, as you well know, is when they pull from other sources and temp gets in that is not as easy to kind of, you know, it's one thing to knock yourself off and kind of better a cue that you did for a previous film. I mean, these guys can speak to that, but it's, you know, there are always the template. I mean, every film and television project has a temp love story. I think that it happens everywhere. So that's one of the things we have to deal with on a regular basis, both as a music supervisor, in terms of licensed music, and in terms of you know, the composers having to you know, capture a vibe. And
sometimes when it's like something dangerous has been temped in, we're just like, get that out of there before it grows grass. You know, we don't switch that out, get some more practical solution in there before it becomes temp love.
that's right.
And actually on the second movie had a really nice hybrid of a wealthy amount of new stuff, but it had the core of the old stuff, which is what the fans wanted, which was just perfect on the character. But when it came to the technical side of the cue sheet and sorting that all out, it was a nightmare. And I remember I was over at Lionsgate. They're like, can you please come over and help us figure this out? And so we're watching the movie. We've got cue sheets for the thing, and I've got the cue sheet for the first one. I'm like, okay, this is John Wick 2, John Wick 1. Oh, now back to John Wick 2 there. About John Wick 1, it was just like,
well, all the
craziness.
masters were new, but this indie movie turned into multiple producerial factions kind of a thing on the second one. So it became a little bit more complicated because not all the same parties were involved moving forward on the second one. The temp stuff, like you know, it's always our music, except if they have a song, and then, you know, how do we beat the song? You know, it's pretty tough to do sometimes, but we've gotten through it so far, and it's definitely yielded some great music moments for us in the creative process. And at the end of the day, it makes the films more insular and self-contained, so it's cool.
So I have a little temp music anecdote from the second movie that some of the independent songwriters or artists out here might like to hear, which was one of the film editors grab all kinds of stuff off of YouTube, which is like the most Wild West of who owns it and who has the rights and what's posted. So it's kind of the worst thing they could do. But there was just an understated source piano piece, and when Keanu and Common's character's name, I can't remember, the bad guy in the second movie.
Bad guy in the second movie.
Yeah, the bad guy in the second movie had just had this knockdown, drag-out fight, but then they get inside the Continental Hotel in Rome, where the rules are assassins cannot harm each other in the hotel. So we had nice counterpoint piano music, you know, playing in the background. So the piece of music, like I could have just broomed it out and put a similar feel in there and told the director you couldn't have it or whatever. But it's a subtle cue, but tempo of it and set in a little bit. So I looked it up through YouTube, and it turned out it was this guy named Chaim Shapiro, who's an Israeli pianist who just filmed himself playing piano in his living room, and with just one microphone over his piano. And he had maybe 8 or 12 nice piano pieces on there. And that's all it was, just a live thing from his living room in Tel Aviv. So I couldn't find him anywhere. He's just sort of like an amateur guy. And I contacted him through Facebook, just like tried to friend him on Facebook. And then I sent him a message, hey, I'm music supervisor for John Wick 2. Can we license this song? I mean, he didn't get a huge amount of money, but it's cool to put, in my opinion, to put this indie, music in there and keep it. It's kind of in the spirit of Chad. In the first movie, we had this band called Kaleida, these great two singer-songwriter women from London who were very cool. And they were in, and David Leitch got another track from them for another movie. So these guys are all about team building, and that's really fortunate for us because as they move forward, and if I'm ever back out to being an independent, I've got two prolific directors I can try to hit up. If I can win them back.
But wait, your seat at the table is, no. They're
I'll prank call Kevin Edelman. I'll be like, this is Chad's assistant. We moved the meeting to 4, and then I'll show up at 2.
Some subterfuge waiting to happen.
Absolutely. So, mixing-wise, you want to talk about, you took all your sample-based stuff and your live guitar, viola. You want to talk about that and how you made it all happen. And Gus is your key person on your team, right?
Well, actually, for John Wick, Joel and I, we mixed a lot of our stuff ourselves, and then our friend Robert Carranza did some drum recordings with Gil Sharon, who's our friend who played in Marilyn Manson for a while. We played together in that band, and
that drum session was really fun. I remember that.
He's amazing.
I can't remember the name. It's a drum-only studio off
Jack Johnson's.
What is it?
It's Jack Johnson's.
It's behind Brushfire Records, Jack Johnson's place, and there's permanently an A+ drum set mic'd up. They have great preamps, great everything. So Tyler drove up the session in, and we had Gil, who's one of your live drummers from the Manson tour, and from the
he does. I mean, he's incredible.
Much more than
so
that, yeah.
He does a lot with me. But Joel put him to the test with some pretty tricky business on that first one. So it was a fun day in the studio.
He was a machine. I remember being impressed by a drummer who just sight read music that well, and just by the first 1.5 takes, and it was like done, moving on. Both of your time is so precious, and to go knock out all the drum tracks in 3 hours is incredible.
Yeah, we don't have time aplenty. So we're usually trying to get a couple hours sleep some day. But yeah. Anyway, we do have fun. It makes you nuts. I mean, both of us, Joel and I, have come close to nervous breakdowns on these movies. But
did you? Because I was blissfully unaware of your trials and tribulations on number 3. Did you guys have a proper scoring session with orchestra on John Wick 3? Did you go to England or Prague or anything? Just kept the same old formula going?
Orchestra of 2.
West Side and Studio City connecting?
Yeah. Yeah, we had a couple of guest colors on the score on each of them, but no, it's really just Joel and I, just because once we do something and Chad hears it, he's like, yes, that's what I want. So
are there any composers here in the crowd? All right, well, good, a good amount. So would you mind sharing like what software you guys use, or what are your orchestra samples, or what are the secrets of the sauce?
Just all GarageBand, the whole thing.
All right, that's about our budget on the first, GarageBand.
Joel?
I'm predominantly in Logic. The interesting thing about samples, bringing up the first film, it's, I'm trying to think what the percentage is, but the vast majority of the music in the first one isn't really sample-based. There are some samples in there, and there's, some Spitfire libraries and some stuff mixed in, but I would say the bulk of it is just audio. It's a surprising amount of bass. Like just bass guitar that doesn't sound like bass, manipulated and taken more of like a record producing kind of approach of just recording and manipulating and bowing stuff. And there's the first score has mandolin in it, which isn't really obvious. Nothing necessarily sounds like the instruments they are, but as you said, coming from a smaller budget, the goal was how to make something sound expensive and not sound like it was done for $1.95.
Even though it was done for $1.
So essentially, it's just as much audio as possible, and then mixing in and programming some percussion, and then live drums, and the guitar viol, and what else was there? There was got a sultry violin ukulele that was like bowed and stuff mixed in with string samples to kind of, when there were strings, to make it.
I think the films really are cinematic, and it's a great theatrical experience, and the sound mix is good and all that stuff. But to step back and think that you two did 3 big theatrical hit movies, you know, in your own studios, and no one in the world said, "Hey, that score kind of sounds like shit. It might have been better being recorded at Abbey Road." You know, it's kind of amazing you did that.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, we
Sounds problematic.
we're
We shouldn't advertise this.
no.
We were at Abbey Road for months. The studio said, "We want to give you more money," and it worked out.
Yes,
So,
it did. But we have to be resourceful, and obviously Joel and I both work in film and television, and when you're working on TV, that's a very quick turnaround, and rarely do you have the opportunity, especially like with network television, to record live orchestra. It's been done, obviously, like, you know, Chiquino did it, and there are other composers doing it for Netflix series and whatnot, but these shows that are coming quickly every week that are live broadcast or broadcast at a set time, they usually don't have time for a live orchestra. So you have to be resourceful and create a sound that's holistic and does not sound like it's lacking anything. So taking that sort of experience into this movie really helped us tremendously.
And as music supervisor, we have to be resourceful too, very limited dollars. And I definitely was thrifty in the first movie. Anything that was incidental, like maybe 5 or 6 jazz pieces, I kind of wanted the pitch with the guys to get jazz music to be, especially vibraphone, you know, type jazz music as the sound of the lobby of the Continental Hotel. And especially because all hell breaks loose in the outside world, and John Wick literally limps back into the safe haven of the Continental Hotel, and I just wanted kind of that Muzak-y feel. But I used all library music for that, and I didn't tell the filmmakers it was library music. I just said, "Hey, I got some kind of classic jazz music or whatever. Can we afford this?" "Yeah, you can." And then and the second one, but I still do the libraries and beg for a discount deal from their normal low, reasonable library.
But your son plays vibraphone. I mean,
That was before I really even knew my son was. He would be $200 himself if I.
Yeah.
So,
we work our kid, and we work the nepotism into it by necessity.
And then in John Wick 2, there's a quartet on camera in a museum scene. So I was just super practical on that, and I just got a quartet from a few pieces, and I got the one with the less reverb, the most organic, and we just did playback. I had the group in Rome learn the piece. It was a classic piece. I can't remember if it was Beethoven or something, but we just did a playback to a library track, you know, on set, rolling, playback, and they hit go, and they're playing my MP3 of the library track, and the people are playing along, and we mixed it in the final film, no fuss, no muss, you know, I think it kind of looks like
You make it sound so easy, man. It's totally not.
Well, the funny thing about John Wick and Chad, nothing's easy with Chad, like, all of a sudden we're there, and the quartet is 6 women. And I go, "Well, Chad, there's only really 4 parts on the recording on the piece." "It doesn't matter. I want these. When I have these 2 out, it just gives me a longer pan down, and it's really kind of cool and classic." I'm like, "All right, well, I guess we could do it." John, I saw something on the Apple News flow just this morning because Chad had to do John Wick 3 opening in Tokyo. So it said something like, "Director Chad Stahelski admits that John Wick is a wacky world." So we definitely aren't beholden to any, he would think out of the box and be open to any pitch we gave him. You guys did something on camera?
Yeah, I mean, this speaks to that exact, to that theory in that, so there's some a cappella singers in the 3rd installment, and so typically we would want to pre-record singers and have this quartet, quartet of singers, do a pre-record, assign the parts, have everyone play, miming to a playback track. But that's not the way Chad wanted to shoot it. He wanted to do it live. He just felt like he just wanted to capture it live. We're going to pass these singers, and it's going to be a very quick beat, and the song is kind of an homage to Rocky. It's the first piece of music you hear in Rocky is a song that was written by Frank Stallone, Sly's brother, called "Take You Back," and it's everyone's huddled around the trash can with the fire, and they're singing it, and Rocky comes by and takes a swig of the bottle, and Chad likes to slip these little pop culture homages into the films, and this was the one he wanted to do with this a cappella group singing on the library steps. So shooting it live was going to be a challenge. I went to New York where we were shooting it on the steps of the New York Library, and I had a few hours to work with the singers before the shoot. And in the story, these are not supposed to be professional singers. They're actually assassins. They're all out to get John, not this John, but the one in the film. And so they weren't supposed to be great, but I still wanted to make sure that we were going to have something to use for our production. So I had some time to work with them. I got them into a room and found out that really only one of them could sing.
Can you sing, by the way?
What's
you
that?
Help guide them?
I mean,
under duress?
Under duress, I can. No. No, the answer. So, but I had a keyboard and I had a laptop and I had notes and I had parts and I had a vocal arranger, kind of arrange it so that I could assign parts, and I was prepared. But when you get in a room and 3 of the 4 people can't really sing, I just started having them go in unison and having the one that could sing harmonize. I identified the guy that could sing pretty quickly, and I told Chad, this is the guy that you should have doing the lead part. I mean, if you're going to shoot it live. And by the way, the live scene was in the rain. They had these massive rain apparatus set up over the library, and so it's a scene in the rain with live singing. I mean, what could go wrong? Yeah, on a public street in New York, what could go wrong, right? But that's what we ended up using. I mean, it ends up being something that we pan across. We have enough of the vocal where you can hear what they're singing, and it's supposed to sound not great, not professional, but it sounds good enough because the guy that sings lead has a pretty good voice, and he's harmonizing and with the unison, and it actually ended up working.
You say harmonizing like 4 drunk people singing "Happy Birthday"?
Pretty much, pretty much. But again, in the final cut of the film, it ends up being when you look at a script, you don't know how featured the director wants to make something. In the script, it looked like a major moment, and as the film got cut, and those characters got really trimmed down. I mean, they were supposed to come back later in the film and be singing the song again. And as they're like kind of going through the train station, you hear them singing the song. That all got cut out. So we see them as John Wick is coming out of the library. You hear them singing as we kind of pan across, but that's it. So a lot of it got trimmed down to where it wasn't featured enough where it needed to sound any better. And that was a Chad trick. Chad knew that's the way he wanted to do it.
Chad just didn't want it to be like Glee or something that says, oh, here's like a canned Hollywood overproduced moment, so mission accomplished.
Mission accomplished, and he knew, I'm sure he knew all along that's what he wanted it to be, and that's what it ended up being.
Cool. Well, I want to do a good amount of Q&A, and hopefully and if not, I'll start doing more Q&A with these guys. But I think we're gonna have a microphone here. If anyone has any questions about anything, we have 3 movies to choose from. 4 experts up here on the stage, I guess.
What's your first question, John?
What's my first question? Okay. Did you end up paying for your own plane ticket to appear in John Wick 2?
No, I did not. That came out of Chad's pocket. He paid for my hotel and my plane.
I remember there was a bit of like gray area there at the end.
Yeah. No, but that was a testament to how excited he is about what he wants to do. He just, there's such a punk rock attitude that the guy makes films with that you can't help but run through the wall with the guy. It is as stressful as it can be. You want to do
Let's reminisce about that Rome trip too, because to be on John Wick 1 on such a shoestring everything, and we were just laughing our heads off that we were in Rome shooting for 11 days. We shut down the second biggest tourist attraction in Rome for Chad to have this crazy vision play out. So and you were in kind of crazy like makeup and you were playing guitar viol, right?
Yeah, and he just wanted the bowed guitar instrument, and he just said, "Put that shit on your face that you do with Manson." So I'm like, okay.
Yeah, well, he featured you guys pretty well. I mean, how did you feel? You're obviously, have you been on camera in another movie before, or was that your first?
I think I'm in like 3 frames of Guardians of the Galaxy.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, yeah. I hit the cutting room floor because when they did the reshoots, I'm like, I can't make it, sorry.
And when you were sitting in the premiere of John Wick 2 and the big rave scene came up and it pans across, I remember it was this awesome sort of like drone shot, and the drone shot finds the band, and you happen to know that guy who's playing guitar viola. How did it strike you? Were you
I
like,
kind
oh,
of cringe and hide, you know?
Cringy.
kind of.
I thought it was badass. I loved it. I hope it was worth your while, freezing your ass off overnight in Rome. There's a question here.
It's funny because just before I was going to ask, have you ever used Jonathan Wilson's boat guitars?
That is Jonathan Wilson's.
Bingo, because I was like, I recognize this guy, and I've known Jonathan Wilson. He's a great guy. And
He's
that's
awesome.
why I recognize him.
And actually, one of his first instruments is my first guitar viola, which I used in 300, and then it became a whole.
Bingo. That's how I know you. Yeah, great work.
but
I'm glad you guys worked together.
He's amazing, and without people like him, you know, we wouldn't have these awesome tools for our trade. You know, that guy's a really, really talented guy.
And it was wacky. You guys were on stage like a real band playing in front of a huge, you know, thousands of people rave, but like all Hollywood movies, they only had about 300 people for extras, and they moved them in squares. Like they moved blocks of them around and got plate shots, and then they put it all together, and it looked like 3,000 people.
They smoked like 3,000 people.
They were cool.
I remember that. They smoked like 3,000.
But not to get too off topic, but how good were those paninis at the craft service in Rome? I mean, seriously, like, crafts that we were like freezing, there was amazing cappuccino and paninis at craft service.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You know, flasks of, radiator fluid. It's cold.
That was a fun one. So anything up here?
Yeah, I have a question for Joel. Do you intentionally put yourself in a state of working like 40 hours straight for an advantage? Like a mental advantage? Because
For a mental advantage? No.
I've heard when you get your brain into like an alpha state that your creativity level is enhanced.
If that was my thought on the first one, I discovered that by doing so, every film, I think my brain capacity and ability gets reduced by 6.5%. So I wouldn't recommend it. It really comes out of a combination of necessity and just, I guess, genetics. One, I've never been a great sleeper. And whenever I'm on a project, I find that when I am asleep, half the time I'm writing, and I get stuck where there's scenes in my head just looping, and I'm figuring out like what to do with them, especially if they're problem scenes. So then I just don't really sleep. So it's sort of a half fog.
I get it.
And then the next day I try to
Next day shows up.
create it. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. Sleep is important.
Working together, though, the interesting thing is I'll call Joel like at 4 in the afternoon and ask him a question, be like, yeah, what? And I'm like, you okay? He's like, yeah, I was just sleeping. I'm like, oh shit. So he'll tell me, yeah, I've been up for 40 hours.
I'm an advocate for sleep, and recently there was a Tom York interview where he talked about how sleep was good for your brain. And additionally, there are plenty of articles and research that says it's good for your heart health. So don't do this.
Too late, I already do it.
Stop.
Yeah, my first 10 or 12 movies, I used to pride myself on pulling all-nighters and lack of sleep and all that stuff. But thankfully, I've gotten wiser in my old age, and it really is part of your overall health. You know?
This is all stress. That's what we're talking about. There's no pride. Not in that. But
Try to get at least 3 hours of sleep a night. Okay,
you go till you
And
don't.
by the way, are you working tonight? Both of you guys are going back to your studios and working on score reviews, I would imagine.
I'm gonna do, well, I have to go to a party right from here, and then I'm gonna go back into my studio because I'm getting crushed with deadlines. So say la vie, it is what it is. I'm sure whatever I do will be not very good.
What are you both working on right now that we can look forward to coming out? And you said you're on a series now, or did that end?
Yes, a few of them. These things, I try not to schedule my life so it's overlapping, but sometimes things push later than they schedule. Sometimes they start early. So I'm just working on this show, just starting on Stumptown, which just as I started, I'm seeing all the billboards. I'm like, shit, like I was watching the Super Bowl, earlier this year, and there were all these Hobbs and Shaw trailers, and a couple of my friends were like, "Aren't you doing that movie?" And I'm like, because I hadn't even seen the movie yet. I didn't even have it, hadn't even started, so the pressure was incredible. But we're working on The Purge 2, second series, which is super fun, and Gendy Tartakovsky has his animated show Primal, which that's like every few weeks we have a new episode, and Creep Show is something we just finished, which is going to be really good. And just trying to get to the finish line on my Cirque du Soleil show. Which,
right, a live show in Vegas. Yeah, there was a great article in LA Times a few weeks back about that.
Yeah, well, just, I see that gate like in Indiana Jones. I just see it coming down. I'm just like running to get out of there just in time. But
when does that show open in Vegas?
October 24th is the soft opening, and then the premiere's November 14th. So
amazing.
It's going to be pretty, it's going to be.
What's the name of it?
Pretty crazy. It's called Run.
Run. Okay.
And it's at the Luxor, and it's their first foray into live action. So we'll see how it all goes.
Awesome. How about you, Joel? What do you have coming up?
There's a few things in the fire, and then currently I have to go home and print, or not to the studio and print stems for helping a friend of mine on this upbeat God Friended Me show where no one dies, and there hasn't been a gun yet.
All right.
Which is awesome.
A question. You mind if I ask you a question?
Yeah. Sure.
I don't remember if we ever discussed it, but maybe you'd want to go into details on the Moroccan musicians that were recorded. You know anything about how that came to be, or was organized, or clearing?
No, I don't. No, that was there were things. What happens in Morocco stays in Morocco. No, they hired some local musicians to be on camera. We ended up not using their audio, but that just came about with the local crew, and that was kind of done on site. It was actually news to us when we came back and saw musicians on camera, but it ended up being very incidental, and we ended up not using the audio. But that was not planned. That was not planned. That was something that was decided across the world without our input.
And that's also a testament to Chad Stahelski, his love of music. He wants to do an ornate, set design. Get me musicians. I want on-camera musicians. He always keeps music involved, and that's why we love him and David Leitch.
Yeah, he does. He definitely values the spirit of music, and he celebrates music. He listens to music a lot. He's very enthusiastic, and he's that guy that has that fucking A, man. That's his vibe, And when he says wacky, he says that a lot. So he has given Joel and I a lot of freedom to explore different concepts within the construct of John Wick, and is pushing us. He's not trying to contain us within comfortable boundaries. He's always inviting us to surprise him with something weird.
And on Parabellum, you guys did that cool original Bush song for the end title of the movie, which I thought was really cool. And I had the pleasure of going to the Greek Theater with you a few weeks back, and you got a nice shout out from Gavin Rossdale on the stage. And Gavin, another person in the neighborhood, where if we cut across the Fryman Trail, the three of us could be at his house in 5 minutes.
Yeah, how about that? Our first song.
We keep it local. So
yeah,
don't work with us, just kind of move.
But that was another case of Tyler happened to be working with Gavin, and he was working on a record with Gavin, and I think Tyler realized this would be great for John Wick. So that was something that's
called bullet holes. It was coincidental, but
it really was one of those. Again, like you were working with Manson on the first, before the first one, and that was just kind of a perfect fit for that film. And the fact that you were working with Gavin on his record when this film kind of came together.
We had Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains on the second one.
Yeah, that was a great end title.
Another one of our neighbors.
Jerry's right in the corner. That's kind of hilarious. That's kind of scary.
Are you lazy?
What's that?
You might be lazy.
If
Tyler
can't walk there, he's not working with
I don't drive, really. I have a car, but I don't drive it. I stopped even washing it. I don't even care. But, yeah, I'm just...
But wait, like on the technical front, I do have a question about the Jerry Cantrell song. You delivered that song to me, and oddly, it was like an email that it was an attachment of the email, and oddly, I was able to receive it because it was one WAV file, and it was 172 megabytes big. So, I mean, what was that, like 96K? I mean, it wasn't the biggest file size ever, but it was just one, 3.5 minute rock song, but the file was huge. So it was a miracle I received it. You know, I was on the big stage. But what kind of a WAV file was that, man?
Well, Robert did the.
I can see 32 megabytes or something like that, but 172 megabytes, I was like, there's like a mistake here.
Well, I print at 48 usually, but Robert Carranza did the final mix on that, and he delivered it, and he printed it in 96K. So there you go. He expanded utilized all the bandwidth of just a simple email.
And walk me through your thinking of if I attach this to an email and send it to someone, it's going to get to him? I mean,
we had one shot, you know. And of course, now we're on Dropbox, you know, and, like smart people. But it's been great. That's made it so convenient for Joel and I to play on each other's cues in the film so that we can really cross-pollinate all of our work. And it builds more camaraderie. So it's not just he does this and I do this. By the end of it, it's just kind of a collusion of our interests, our talents, or our madness, or whatever you want to call it, and just trying to get through it.
I know. I mean, Chad, he's so high energy and all that stuff. I know he loved that he had two composers, and he could pick up the phone and call you. He could pick up the phone, but he just loved having a team. So I think it was really a good, positive thing to have all of you.
It takes a village. It does.
And each film was probably 75, 85 minutes of score.
Keep going.
I mean, that was
110 on John Wick 3.
110 minutes of score on John Wick 3?
Yeah, I find these movies all the time. I mean, why is that? Why don't I get like the 30-minute score for the Dying of Cancer movie? No, like Hobbs and Shaw, 100 minutes of score like in 3 weeks. And
because thankfully your directors love using music as an integral part of their films. They go to you.
It definitely, man. It takes a lot to do that. I mean, it's one thing when you're composing in a perfect environment, but to do it when you're exhausted and then you have to crank out another 30 minutes of music by the end of next week, it's pretty insane. So you do end up awake for 40 hours and seeing spots and whatnot.
I know composers who calculate their daily life, their workflow by minutes. I got X amount of minutes to do today. Do you do cues or minutes? Because you used to say, how many cues do you do a day? They go, I don't do cues. I go by minutes. Is that what you do?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, there's just, that you have, especially on a TV show, I mean, you got to get a certain number of minutes done.
I have 11 days to write 30 minutes of music, which is actually a lot. You can usually have less. So
for TV,
you got to write 4 minutes of music a day for that show, signed off, approved to the director, to the producers.
7 minutes, 8 minutes.
Right. Kevin, now you do a lot of television. I mean, how do you guys like the showrunner versus in television being the producer, who's really the final cut and the final shot caller on everything, versus the director, who's typically the final word in the film world?
I don't think I prefer one or the other. I just think that that's where the decision making ends. It just depends on the project. And if it's a film project, obviously it's the director that has the final say on every creative choice. And if it's a TV show, it's the showrunner. So it's a different environment working in television, and we all do both. But it's it's a different power structure in terms of who's making the decisions. But it's just changes who you're answering to, but it doesn't really change your approach. I think I'm always trying to get the best music for my director on a film or my showrunner on a show, for within our budget.
How about you, Tyler?
I really enjoy both. I really like TV. I like the camaraderie that a great team doing a TV show, develops. I think there's a great support for everyone to help ensure one another's success. So I really do like that. Films are just like, it's crazy, but you feel it when it's done, and then it's released in theaters. That's pretty amazing. But I don't know, I liking TV though a bit.
Well, TV, I kind of like the practicality. A showrunner has a little bit of more of a producerial cap on, and they're maybe a little more budget conscious and a little bit more deadline conscious, where a director knows just because you say you have to be done by this, there's still a week and a half before it gets print mastered and shipped out to the world, so I'll keep going. And film director, I'll explain to them after we really tried did everything tore up the earth to, and I say to the director, all right, sorry, it's like, I'm not a person that says no or anything, but the answer on Jay-Z, on our timeline, on our thing, it's no, sorry, you can't have Jay-Z. And the director will go, okay, I understand. Give me Kanye. Dude, I'm like, are you kidding me? You know, where the showrunner would be like, okay, I'll use that hip hop library alt you had was really strong, whoever that Chicago guy was.
Yeah, I would say for the composers in the room, no matter how frustrated you are, how exhausted you are, whatever, you always have to be solution oriented. You can't show how flustered you are, how exhausted you are. You just have to find a way to make it happen for the filmmakers, because they're just trying to make something great. They're not trying to ruin our lives, although sometimes we feel that way. But you know, just think about it. If you feel that somebody's going to quit or they're going to not be able to respond to your direction if you were directing, I mean, what does that do to your process in your film? So it's a responsibility that we take on anytime we take a job. If we're fortunate enough to be hired on a job, that we just see it through to the absolute best of our ability, and try and be very positive and help uplift the director, because they need a shot in the arm too. They're getting,
Especially the up and coming ones, there's so much online. If that pilot doesn't get picked up, they may not have a career ever, you know?
Yep.
But if that pilot gets picked up and your score is slamming and really an important part of it, you know, you got to be there for them. You and I are quite established, and Kevin, Joel, you know, you're a young whippersnapper coming up. I want you to have that image in the thing, because you're an old guy like us, but you look healthy. I don't know how you do that. But
Terrible on the inside.
But anyway, you know, we've got a comfortable amount of credits. Yes. We've got a comfortable amount of credits, and people have everything on the line, some of the people we work with, and they're going to go 26 hours a day, especially down the home stretch.
yeah. But anyway, the camaraderie is great, and I have these three to thank for this whole John Wick experience. He brought me into it. Both John and Kevin have been instrumental in the songs being created and paid for by the studios for the films. And then Joel is an incredible collaborator, partner, great artist. And I hope that you all become much more familiar with him if you are not yet.
Well, I remember one thing, a goal we set, the very first meeting with me, you, Chad, and David Leach, the co-director, John Houlihan. We said we would love, they said it would be great to have music that if you heard it somewhere else, you'd go, oh, that's John Wick music in that trailer, or whatever. And I think you got Joel and Tyler, I think you established that. You have a unique John Wick sound, you know, that Kevin very well described earlier about this kind of classic nature, but this grittiness, and it kind of embodies the character. So hats off to you guys. You really made something special. So I think that's it, unless there's one more final any question, but I think that might be a wrap. One right there.
Yeah, sorry to end such a bummer. This would have fit really well when you guys were talking about cues and like splitting up your time. But I guess my question is when you're working on multiple projects at once as composers, you know, I can understand how some of that could require on a subconscious level your investment emotionally when you're trying to lift picture for one tone and then for another. So how do you manage shifting between these different tones and colors and emotional needs when you're working on multiple projects at once? Like, how can you go from like something super dramatic, not dramatic, but like something super violent into like something like very like heartfelt, and there's something like cathartic all in one day? You know what I mean?
For the terrible drama, I just think of something like, you know, my dog got run over by a car once, you know. And then another time I might think of, you know, a kid's birthday or something, you know, just some, you know, I mean, just, you just have to do the job. And to be an authentic artist, you have to receive all this stuff. And that's why we're all crazy, because we really have to receive all the emotions and process them on some level that gives us enough inspiration to iterate it in the form of music, you know.
Joel, were you writing your happy-go-lucky TV series while you were finishing John Wick Parabellum? Were you doing two at the same time?
Not on 3. On 2, I was on a TV series that was more FBI driven. I mean, as far as switching hats, I mean, it's somewhat difficult, but I think it more comes down to, at least for me, I don't know about you, but the picture dictates what it wants. And as soon as you put it up in front of you, it's speaking and communicating what it wants. So it's, at least for me, it pushes out whatever I was looking at earlier in the day. And then often it comes down to cinematography, the lighting, just the general tone and vibes different. So I think once you're receiving that information, it just makes you filter it and process it out in a different way. And then if someone puts up, I don't know, an animated cartoon or something in front of you, then you respond to that differently. So
Joel's being much more pragmatic about his answer. I was being a little bit animated about it. But then we commiserate a lot, huh?
I can change my answer.
Speaking of animated,
Don't do it.
On the first John Wick, I had a final mix of an animated film called The Book of Life, starting on the exact first day the final mix of John Wick was starting. And it was like, oh my God, I'm like, I got to be at both and really wanted to be there for both directors, so I cared about both projects deeply. So as the luck of the Irish would have it, one was on stage A at Formosa and one was on stage B. So I was just like, oh my God. So I would leave like half drink coffee and notebooks on the one stage, you know, and like be seen around, but I would be one of the dark John Wick world. I'd go in the next theater 50 feet away, and it was super colorful, Mexican Day of the Dead, Mexican folk art, you know, super upbeat, guitarro, kind of lightweight, you know, music and party fiesta stuff. So it was actually gave good perspective because I think it helps you kind of know, you know, it's like, all right, now I know I'm in John Wick's world, and it better scare me, and it better be starkly different from where I just came from, you know.
Well, yeah.
There's also this little sneaky little stairwell that I could like go out like the projectionist booth and like just appear like a hologram in each theater at the same time, you know. And I got lucky on that one.
And you learn how to dance.
I do learn how to dance. So anyway, thank you guys for sharing everything.